All right, so I've got a little perceptual drawing right here, just of what does that shoe kind of look like if I just eyeball it over there. To me, this is not much to write home about, but I didn't spend a whole lot of time on it. Just looking at my shoe in perspective, trying to get a sense for what that would look like in three-point perspective. And now what I want to do is I want to create, I want to, like, what would the box look like that would hold that? What would that box look like? I might start this time with the top. A top plane. So I'm going to think about maybe starting, and this is how I'm going to approach the big drawing as well. I'm going to start with a Y here. Looking at all three of those angles, they're over 90 degrees. Okay, they have to be. When it's time to draw the big one, I got to do the same thing. Now, as I'm drawing this, I'm going to think about my study. Okay, that's right up here. I want to look at the length to width on this thing as I'm going to draw this. As I draw the sides, I'll be looking, at the height to length. Okay, height, length, width. So I'm going to make a guess here as to how long that's going to be. Now, this is not going to be exactly the same as this over here, right? So we're starting with the perceptual thing here. We're going to move into this conceptual stuff where we're going to stay for a long time, and then we'll come back to the perceptual stuff at the end. And the perceptual stuff has to obey the rules of this perspective that we're setting this up in here. So this is going to change maybe a little bit angle-wise from this. I'm not going to worry too much about that, right? Now the handout page does not assume that the person has done a small study in perspective. It just starts in with like, hey folks, here's how you draw a three-point perspective box in perspective. Freehand, right? That is fine. It's good. At the time when I made that handout, I didn't even let them use a, I'm going to draw this right here. I didn't even let them use a ruler at this point. No strings, no ruler, okay? But I've since come to decide that this freehand tool, that the straight edge as a freehand tool is actually pretty useful, and it's totally legit. I don't have a problem with it. So anyways, once maybe I did. The thing is, I do think it's important to be able to draw a three-point perspective box without the vanishing points on your page. That's one of the big skills that I'm trying to teach you on this last project. Actually, the last two projects and this project. Okay. So now that I've drawn the top, it's pretty extreme, the perspective here, because this box is so big. If I don't want it to be quite that extreme, I'm going to, shrink it down. One thing that I noticed in almost everybody's, though, is that you started with a fairly extreme box, and by the time you translated that onto your big page, it had mellowed out. There is a tendency among a lot of students that they tend to straighten things out, right? So that here, where I've got very, very noticeable, rather exaggerated perspective, that by the time I'm done, I might end up having something that's pretty parallel. Anyways, let's try to keep that kind of translation to a minimum. So I've got this front Y, I've drawn the top edge, and now I've just started to draw this Z dimension. I'm going to draw all 4 Z lines down here. And this is what I'm going to end up doing when I draw it large. 1, 2, 3. Let me just go ahead and draw this flat because I don't need. Okay. All right. So now I've got the Z dimension. And now what I'm going to do is I want to look at my steady. You know, I'm going to make this vertical. Hold on.